Welcome to the R&R Showtime podcast with Robert.
And Ryan.
So today's episode is going to be about Wandavision, episode 3. I think we're going to start it off with first impressions, Ryan.
Yes.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. I mean, I like it. Yeah, I think I'm really digging this show. This is easily the best episode so far of the 3, but
Excellent. Yeah, I would agree. I definitely like this one more than the last 2. I almost see why they kind of released the first 2 together and then this one, because the first 2 almost hit the same note, and then this one kind of is transitioning. I mean, literally and figuratively. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed this one more. So did you have some points you wanted to start off with on the episode overall?
So yeah, if that's all you have to say about your impression, like, do you have like would you say you like it more than the first 2 episodes?
Yeah, definitely like it more than the first 2 episodes. First 2 episodes, I knew there was more coming, but again, it just wasn't appealing to me particularly.
And this episode feels like the more coming has come.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're really getting into what I'm expecting and waiting to see of the show. I'm getting more interested. I'm wanting to see what's happening. There's just more questions being raised, and that always intrigues me.
All right. And I agree. Before we start this, I'm just going to say I went back and watched the first 2 episodes and also rewatched episode 3. So I may want to dive into something that I noticed in the first 2 episodes. But first let's start with a recap of the plot of this episode. Do you feel like you have a good basis on the plot? I feel like this is also the easiest to describe plot so far.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the plot of the episode is that Wanda and Vision are pregnant, and they are preparing to have a child. The strange circumstances of the pregnancy, in that it happened literally instantaneously, are sort of the biggest feature of this pregnancy. It's an accelerated pregnancy, and it's happening so quickly, and they're literally having to prepare for it in hours. So that's generally it.
Yeah, so we see not only does the pregnancy happen so quickly, but we see a lot of these sort of Wanda being pregnant is affecting her powers and her ability to control herself. Like when she has feels kicking, she creates butterflies. When she has contractions, she changes her outfit or causes things to happen around them. The lights go out. It starts to rain.
Yeah, her water breaks, and literally it rains in the house. The pipes burst in one of their neighbor's house.
Yeah, so things are happening. And so when she goes into labor, Vision has to leave to go get the doctor. And this is when Geraldine, the character from the previous episode, shows up with kind of a different personality with the change in era. We didn't say that this episode is set in the 70s. We get a very clear delineation now that the first episode was meant to be the 50s, like the Honeymooners. The second episode, 60s, a little more Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie. And then this episode, for me, gives like a lot of Brady Bunch vibes.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the dress, the style of the apartment, it's in color. Even the beginning of the title opening is all very 70s.
And as a result, the characters around them are also looking different. Geraldine in particular, her hair is different, her wardrobe is different, her personality is a little different. She was a little more reserved in the previous episode, and now she's a little more colorful in her demeanor and approach. She walks in and just starts telling a story. That's not kind of the vibe I got from her in the previous episode. So she has changed.
Yeah. And it's funny that it's actually mentioned that she's new to town. So I think she says that in the little tea party thing in the episodes too, that she's new and she doesn't really know anybody. And that's why her and Wanda kind of get along a little bit at that tea party. I might be wrong about her being new, but I know that in this episode, it is specifically mentioned that she's new to town.
Yes. Which comes up a little later. So Geraldine comes over, and there's this whole wacky thing with Wanda trying to hide the pregnancy with all sorts of little sight gags. But eventually, it's time. She's going into labor. She needs to give birth, and so Geraldine helps her out with it because Vision still hasn't got there,
Mm.
and she delivers the first of two babies with Geraldine there. Geraldine actually providing a very good support to her. It's like a very a nice moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vision arrives with the doctor a little too late for the first baby, but is there to see the second one born. Two boys, Tommy and Billy, which was kind of, to me, was kind of telegraphed, foreshadowed coming into that happening, because they were fighting over which one name they wanted, and how it's too bad that they couldn't have both, but they had both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the whole episode, there's this back and forth where Vision wants it to be Billy and Wanda wants it to be Tommy, and they keep going, oh, well, little Billy and Tommy. So,
yeah, it's a very fun little foreplay, or
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And a little bit of banter.
Yeah, back and forth. And partially knowing Wanda is a twin, I sort of expected it to be twins as well. I don't think I anticipated it to be two boy twins until they made the Tommy Billy thing such a stick in the episode. But yeah, so after the two twins are had, Vision takes the doctor outside, and while inside, Wanda and Geraldine start to have a conversation, and Wanda discusses her brother, and Geraldine says that wasn't he killed by Ultron? And that tips Wanda off that this lady knows something. This lady's different. This lady knows too much. And a very tense sequence occurs.
Yes, indeed. And with it resolving once Vision comes back inside after talking to the doctor, Geraldine is gone. And Wanda's explanation is that, well, she had to go. She just had to leave.
Yep.
And one thing about that interaction that I noticed, and we noticed a couple of times, is that Wanda sees these strange things happening, and simultaneously, the question is, does she know what they are and is rejecting them, or is she just as confused somehow? I don't think it's become very apparent which one is true, or whether it's a little bit of both. That maybe some part of her is awakening or becoming aware of what's happening, or that she is aware fully. I don't know. It's a little confusing, which again just makes me ask more questions, and it does actually make me more interested. I want to know. I want the answers to this mystery.
Yeah, and the mystery is furthered even more when Vision is outside talking with the neighbors, and they have like gossip about Geraldine, like, where's she from? She's not from here. She doesn't have a family. She doesn't have a home, is what they say.
Yeah, which, for what they're building here with the whole family moniker and everybody, that she literally doesn't have a home. So where is she when she's not doing something, when she's out and about, if she doesn't have a home in the town?
Yeah, she came in saying that her pipes burst. So what pipes burst?
Yeah, so she must have been deceiving them somehow.
And I even noticed, I thought it was of note that she played a prominent role in the title sequence of the episode as well. Like, I think maybe the neighbors were in the title sequences of the other episodes, but in this one, with the sort of the theme song to this episode kind of made me think of Three's Company in a way, but also like a Brady Bunch-ish kind of vibe to it. It's very 70s. And I just remember noting that she was in the title sequence of this, and I thought that was noteworthy. But yeah, so the neighbors were suspicious of her, but they also almost led on to Vision that they know that they're there for some reason, but they never say what the reason is or why they're all there.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out also about the neighbors. So earlier in the episode, Herb, the character's name, is outside trimming his bushes, and at first it's relatively normal, just a neighbor trimming his bushes, but then I think in a second interaction with Vision, he begins to, literally his hedge trimmers begin to cut into the concrete wall that separates their 2 yards, and Vision even points out, he says, I think you're missing it a little bit, and he just continues to do it. It's strange. It's almost like he's glitching out, like he just can't stop doing exactly what he's doing in that moment. I think this may play back into Wanda, and because she's having all these spasms, all these things are changing, and she's affecting everything around her. That might be something of, again, her influence or control on everything around her might be extending to even the neighbors, literally making him glitch out and cut into the wall.
All right. So with that, I think we sort of recapped the general. Oh, last thing we see is Geraldine landing. We see the aspect ratio of the show change from the sort of letterbox to the sort of movie aspect ratio as we see Geraldine landing in what we can only assume is the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And she's approached by a bunch of like military vehicles. And we see this sort of fence area like that looks like it's like keeping something in. And so we just got to wonder what is that? Is this the military? Is this SWORD? Is this Hydra? It's hard to say.
Yeah. And now mentioning SWORD, one thing to go back and also review is that Wanda, one thing she specifically saw in Geraldine when they were having the altercation was she asked her about a necklace she was wearing, and the symbol on the necklace was a symbol of SWORD. So
and it is a sword. Yeah.
We maybe are led to believe that Geraldine is involved with SWORD somehow.
Yes. All right. So let's get into the major question. I don't know how long this is going to be the major question of the show, but it's certainly the central mystery right now. Who is in control? Who created this world?
So I think we're want to believe that Wanda must be the one that created the world. She has so much control over the things that are happening, over people, objects, literally everything. Anything that Wanda kind of wants, she can change or transform. So that makes me believe that she is the one that's in control. But sort of a theory that I came up with is that this also may be some kind of separate manifestation that Wanda has interacted with, and now her powers have merged with it. Something to do with, I mean, there's so much that can be opened up with the after Endgame and after the snap and after all the things that have occurred. So who knows really? But one thing I think is that with Geraldine, this is kind of a separate little theory as well, with Geraldine entering into it, and we keep seeing these little commercials that mention Hydra. So we're getting these clues that Hydra is somehow involved or within this. But we also see that SWORD is involved with Geraldine, with one of the commercials mentioning SWORD as well. I'm suspecting that something here that these two different factions are almost trying to take advantage of the situation of this occurrence with Wanda, that maybe SWORD is trying to rescue her from it, and maybe Hydra is trying to use her or abuse her or take her powers or something, that there's some sort of Hydra influence here and there's a SWORD influence. And I suspect that maybe they're sending agents into this reality and assuming that they'll be able to influence or do something to Wanda, but instead they're just wrapped up into it. And so maybe some of these neighbor characters we're seeing are actually Hydra agents and or SWORD agents that have been introduced, much as Geraldine maybe perhaps is herself.
Yeah, that's kind of, you had told me that, and that's sort of where my mind has been kind of going in a similar vein, certainly. So I kind of wrote notes of like the major players within the world to sort of look at. And so the first one is Geraldine and SWORD. So Geraldine, we know is SWORD based on her necklace, at least. We have the strongest inclination of who she is working with, who she represents. And so, but we're given the belief that she is separate from the rest of the neighbors. So she must, if she is SWORD and she's the only one that's SWORD, that does lead me to believe that maybe the other neighbors aren't.
Yeah, potentially, maybe all of the other neighbors are Hydra. Maybe SWORD came into, perhaps this even raised the question, maybe Hydra are the ones that kind of instituted this on Wanda. I mean, we do know that in the beginning, Strucker, a high-level Hydra leader agent, was the one that gave the Maximoffs their powers. So maybe this is some remnant of Hydra that's trying to come back and reclaim it, or
maybe, and you know what? Maybe it's playing into her memories because she remembers Hydra because she was working with Hydra.
Yeah. But then it makes me believe, does that mean that Wanda knows about Sword? Because the last thing, if we go back to the movies, that we ever saw is that Sword seemed like a secret project, that Fury was secretly building Sword. And from the comics, at least, Sword is more of a planetary defense.
Here's a question. You mentioned that one of the commercials saw Sword. So I rewatched the episodes. The first commercial is a Stark brand toaster.
Brand toaster, yeah.
The second episode is a it's Hydra brand. I'm trying to remember what it was, but the second one was a Hydra brand. Oh, it's the watch.
Yeah, Strucker brand watch.
Strucker
Hydro.
Yeah, you can see Hydra on there, but it does say Strucker is the brand of the watch. And then the third one is the Hydra Soak.
Yeah.
So we have 2 Hydra, 1 Stark. These are all things that existed for her. The sword symbol we saw on the helicopter and then on Geraldine's necklace.
Yeah, and I actually had missed this, but I believe it was also on the back of the beekeeper's outfit.
That it looked sort of like a target to me, but if you said that it had the sword, I would believe that, actually.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments.
Yeah. So we see the sword symbol are from things that may have existed outside. That's something I want to get at. That little helicopter, which may have been making the noise by their window, has the sword symbol on it. So, and maybe they made it look like a little toy helicopter, but it's actually a spy drone.
Yeah, that, or potentially maybe that was one of their first attempts to interact with or try to enter this bended reality, and they sent in a real helicopter and it just manifested as a toy. That's the only way that Wanda's reality could accept it, is as a toy.
And which also reminds me of Geraldine in this episode 3. She basically invites herself into the house in a way that other characters have done. The Catherine Hahn neighbor in particular has basically forced herself into the house. But in this episode, we see Geraldine sort of make herself at home, coming right on into the house. And she does indicate like plans to leave the place a couple times, but it's almost like she gets her way in to sort of spy and try to get an assessment on the situation in a way that other neighbors have before. But if we assume that she's separate, then maybe hers is a separate sort of spying than the other neighbors have been doing.
Yeah. So I don't know. This episode really has raised a lot of questions.
Yeah. So,
but I like it. I mean, I think this is something that really appeals to me in general when I watch movies or TV shows, is when a show really asks a lot of questions or presents a lot of mysteries, things that make my mind turn and want to figure out. It keeps me engaged. It makes me sit there and wait every week. I need to see the next episode. I need the new answers. I need to know what's going on. So I like that. I feel like it's really engaged me more by creating more of the mystery.
So yes. So if we assume that Geraldine is our main representative of Sword, what are the neighbors? Who are they working with? Are they Hydra / S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are they figments of Wanda's imagination? Are they just random people? Maybe people that Wanda's met before that she's incorporated into this little place. They seem to know more than they're letting on.
I don't know. That's a fair question. Oh, one thing that comes to my mind is that, so everybody in this episode, they've all transferred outfits and looks. In the previous episodes, Geraldine had kind of a done-up hair, but I believe in this episode, she has her hair in an afro.
Yes. Yeah, I was getting at that earlier.
And so her clothes have changed as well, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the episode, we see her get flung out of the reality, we can assume, and she lands on the grass. When she lands out of there, she is still wearing those clothes. So even if we can assume that this is some kind of changed reality, or that it's not, that it is in essence real, that what's happening there is real to a degree. And even if you come out of that reality, you come out of it with the physicality of whatever occurred in there. So she took those clothes from there. That means that this reality, you could take physical things from it.
Unless we're to assume that she alone brought in clothes from the 70s to change into, or something like that. We don't know. Yeah. But so jumping back to the commercials, I did also notice that it is the same actor and actress in every commercial, except the third commercial, we don't see the actor in particular, but it is the same actress. She looks different. She's wearing different clothes. but it does appear to be the same person in each thing. And if they're representing Hydra products, then are we to assume that they are part of Hydra?
Or, I mean, they did represent a Stark product. Maybe, what if they're like an outside being? What if they're some kind of galactic being? Maybe they're like the arbiters of this reality.
It's possible, yeah. So in this episode, the neighbors we see are Herb, Catherine, Han. I can't remember her name. Sorry, and the doctor. And the doctor lets on that, well, this is a small town. We can't really get out, you know. Herb and Catherine Han have the conversation, hinting at them knowing something else. I want to know what they know. And going back to previous episodes, I've noticed before that characters seem to know more than they're letting on. Like Dottie, I believe is the name of the woman that was running the Sort of Talent show.
Mm-hmm.
She was suspicious of Wanda, so much so that they had their little confrontation. But she sort of drops it when Wanda sort of shows off her powers and like breaks a glass and causes her to bleed. So maybe in that moment she wanted to confront Wanda because she felt she was in a position of power. But when Wanda showed her power, she sort of backed off and sort of let it go for a minute. And going back to the first episode at the dinner party, something that I hadn't noticed the first time was that when the husband starts to choke, he wasn't eating. He was in the middle of talking for like 2 sentences since the last bite he took. There was no food in his mouth to choke on at that moment.
Wow.
In that moment, the only thing that was going on was that Wanda was getting a little stressed and was staring right at him.
Wow. Interesting.
And then when his wife starts saying stop it, at first she's speaking to her husband, oh, stop it. But after a certain point, she turns her attention directly to Wanda, asking Wanda to stop it.
Wow. Very interesting. I'm glad that you went back and rewatch those episodes. It's good to bring these up, and I did not notice them myself.
And those are things that I had thought before, but I hadn't confirmed. Like, I was like, was he eating when he choked? I mean, he must have been. Like, they were at dinner, and like, was she speaking to Wanda specifically, or just sort of speaking to either of them? But she had turned her attention directly to Wanda when that happened. And right after that happened, we assumed that it was like a sort of glitch thing that they wanted to leave. But I think in that moment, maybe they just got nervous. They were like, oh, we prodded a little too much. We tried to get a little bit too much information. Let's back off and let them think that it was a delightful dinner party so we can try this again.
That may lead me to believe that so if I'm to think that some agents are Sword and some agents are Hydra, I feel like the agents of Sword want to rescue Wanda and get them out of this, and the agents of Hydra want to discover maybe some kind of secret that Wanda knows, or get something from her. I mean, obviously they would have more malign and malicious intents with whatever they're doing there. And we have Sword being affiliated with the Avengers. I mean, it's run by Nick Fury, would want to save her or get her out of it in the most peaceful way possible. So I just wonder that maybe does that make us think that they're Sword members because they're trying to wake her up and make her realize something, or is it Hydra agents that are trying to probe her?
Yes. And so another aspect of people trying to get information, trying to figure out what's going on, is the voice in the radio from episode 2, who is apparently not connected with the neighbors because Dottie is surprised by the voice coming through the radio. She's caught off guard by that. She doesn't know what that is. And again, I know who that person is. I know what character that person is, when a character that they played in another Marvel movie. So I have a idea of who they represent. I don't want to get into a spoiler there, but I get the feeling that he is either a member of Sword reaching out to Wanda, or is completely separate from both.
Interesting. Did you say that you looked up the voice actor for that?
Yeah, I know who that actor is, and he is in a.
I'd actually be interested to know what it is you think it is.
See, this is where we could be breaching on it being a spoiler because we know who this person was aligned with at least. So I don't know how much it's giving away.
You know what? Hey, spoiler alert. This is a spoiler for me because Ryan hasn't told me yet, but I think I want to know. I think I'm interested to try and figure out the mystery ahead of time.
Okay, so again, spoiler alert. You can maybe skip ahead.
Potential spoiler, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna map out. It's gonna be 3 minutes of this, and then we're gonna jump off of it. All right. So 3 minutes from now will be no spoilers. All right. But the voice that we hear on the radio is actor Randall Park. You may recognize him from a number of things: the show Fresh Off the Boat, the movie The Interview. But he was in Ant-Man and the Wasp as an FBI agent and Paul Rudd's parole officer. So we know that he is affiliated with the FBI, the U.S. government. So I'm not certain if that means he's probably not Hydra, but he's also probably not Sword. So I'm thinking he's a third party in this situation.
Wow, so that maybe leads us to believe that even so that the U.S. government's probably involved as well.
Yes. And maybe those are the military vehicles. Maybe that's the government, but we don't know.
So maybe Sword is involved in it because we're led to believe, at least from the last MCU movie, that Sword is sort of a secret initiative. It's not public like S.H.I.E.L.D. was. S.H.I.E.L.D. was a known agency that had more clandestine operations. So maybe Sword is involved in a lesser known way, and the U.S. government are the ones that are actually monitoring the situation. Maybe they're working in tandem with Sword potentially. If Nick Fury, I mean, he still probably has government contacts. So
I have another thing that I can spoil that is not within the bounds of the show. It's something that I read off of Wikipedia of another MCU actor that is going to appear in WandaVision. Would you want that spoiled for you?
No, because let's save it just because we can wait until that one's shown. The knowing who the voice actor was from the radio, I think that's fine to understand because anybody, you maybe even recognized it. Did you say you recognized it at first and then
see? But
later?
I had read his name already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so he was in my brain to hear his voice.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think that was too much of a spoiler. That's kind of using some clues that are already before us to learn a little more or make some more predictions. So, but we'll save a Wikipedia article for a little later.
Yeah. All right. So spoilers ended. Hopefully people that skipped ahead have come back. Now at this point, it's been less than 3 minutes, but so I want to now get into Vision. What does Vision know? Because again, the last time we saw Vision in the real world, he died. And going back through these first 2 episodes, Vision just kind of seems confused. Vision seems to be the most out of the loop character of them all. More out of the loop than any of the neighbors, more unaware than Wanda. Like him not knowing that business in the first episode became a little more stark of a quality of him that he begins that episode saying he knows everything, but he constantly doesn't know what things are, what's going on.
Yeah, so maybe it's the Vision that exists in this reality trying to combat with it. I mean, him being, I don't know, he is an ultra intelligent machine, so he should know everything about it, what he's looking at and what things are. But I mean, this it's almost, I think I mentioned before that he's seemingly a little bit dumbed down.
Yeah.
And this might lend to the idea that Wanda is controlling everything, and potentially maybe even begs the question, maybe Wanda entered into something on her own. Maybe she chose to do something, was presented with some kind of opportunity or discovered something and thought that it would bring Vision back. And so maybe this lends to her knowing what's going on more than she claims she does, and knowing that if it's disturbed, Vision will be gone again. And she's doing everything she can to cling to this reality where he exists and where they are happy.
That's why I sort of feel like Vision isn't even real. I think Vision is. I think that Vision is fake here. It makes the gum situation in the second episode make more sense. Like him eating gum and becoming drunk does not make any logical sense with
No.
who he was.
Yeah.
And to begin with, Vision was fake, technically speaking. He's the easiest person to sort of just make up to like have him be a fabricated character based on Wanda's mindset. But Wanda still makes Vision a believable enough thing that she has to deal with the fact that Vision wasn't a complete idiot. He's going to start picking up on things. He's going to start figuring out things. Mm-hmm. She just needs to guide him off of it. Mm-hmm. And so when we see in episode 3, there's a moment where Vision comes to Wanda and says, this whole situation seems weird. I think something's wrong, Wanda. And then it glitches and
the entire screen glitches.
The screen glitches and he goes back to like moments before he said that and he just says something completely different.
Yeah, instead he says, I don't know exactly, how things are going to happen, but I'm just confident in our family or that everything's going to work out. Yeah. He says something reassuring to her.
It's something about nerves about being a parent as opposed to nerves about the world that they're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like throughout the pregnancy, he's confused. He doesn't know why the pregnancy's happening like this or why things are the way they are. He was confused about her. He was confused about what they were gossiping about Geraldine. When he comes in with Geraldine, he's confused about that. Mm-hmm. I think Vision is sort of, if it really is Vision, he is completely unaware of what's going on.
And I think his ultra intelligent brain is battling against the sort of role he's thrust into and trying to figure out the situation. I mean, that him questioning that, it was him almost breaching out of it. And we see anytime somebody or something breaches the suggested reality of these sitcom like episodes, Wanda or something tries to correct it. She tries to keep everything regular and normal and not being disturbed. And I think that is her trying to cling to, because if this goes away, then maybe Vision goes away.
But here's the thing. Anytime something goes awry, if Wanda's there, it gets corrected right away. When Herb's cutting through the wall, that just happens and it stays like that because Wanda never saw it happen.
Yeah.
Wanda was never there to make that not happen in front of Vision.
Yeah.
So I think it's Wanda. And that's sort of the final thing I want to get at. So we were talking about how a lot of these powers don't seem to be ones that Wanda has. Wanda's powers come from the Mind Stone, much like Vision's. But what are the powers of the Mind Stone? What if this is all within her mind, but she's able to expand the powers of her own mind so much that she's able to create this entire world. And within that world, she has complete control. Her powers exceed what they were before.
Yeah. And maybe because it's in her mind, again, that actually would lend some proof that she has complete control over everything, but she doesn't know that she has complete control over everything in some ways.
Yeah.
Her powers are limited because it's almost like a dream. This may be in some ways kind of like a dream.
Yeah, possibly a dream. Possibly some sort of break from reality as a result of the trauma of Infinity War and Endgame.
Yep, losing Vision and everything. I mean, she's lost her brother and she lost Vision, and now she's kind of just alone again in the world. There was a time when she was being persecuted for essentially accidentally, being instrumental in the death of all of those people in Civil War. So
yeah, let's think who her allies are. It's Captain America, he's gone. Vision, he's gone. Pietro, he's gone. You could say maybe Tony was on her side trying to keep her safe. He's gone.
Mm-hmm. Potentially even Hawkeye. At one point was trying to be, but he's essentially separated from everybody.
Scarlett Johansson. What's her?
Black Widow.
Black Widow?
Yeah.
She's gone.
Yeah. No, you're right. What the Avengers were is completely different. And maybe her not having any kind of support system, and in the new world that's come forth with we can assume that in the new Earth post endgame events, I mean, the governments are probably reacting to this, and I mean, they're probably overreacting to this. Essentially, they are probably maybe they're being extra. The Sokovia Accords and them monitoring heroes and things like that are probably pushed to the umpteenth degree. I mean, they don't have Iron Man to guide them anymore. They don't have Captain America. Again,
there's
the
a power,
world, the world has lost.
There's a
those
power
leaders.
vacuum
Yeah.
right now. Like we don't, right? Like maybe that's why we're seeing Hydra again. Like Hydra sees this as an opportunity where things are weak. Iron Man and Captain are gone. Let's get in. Let's get our control back, because especially with Cap gone, this is the perfect opportunity for them to retake their power.
Yeah.
And then, but it's also Sword trying to establish itself while still trying to keep under the radar, the way that Shield kind of lost control. One, because Shield was Hydra, but also because Shield became public.
Yeah, exactly. And, maybe we'll see more to this particular topic we just discussed in Captain America and the Winter, or not, Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Sorry. He is Captain America.
Yeah.
But I believe I also know just about that show is that the U.S. kind of goes on like a propaganda thing where they make their own Captain America. And so that's maybe why he's still Falcon, because the U.S. and the world isn't accepting him as the new Captain America, even if Steve Rogers said that you should be the new one.
I'll be honest, I'm much more excited now just thinking about, because I hadn't even considered the sort of like intricacies of the government and Hydra, Shield, Sword. Those weren't things I was really thinking about until WandaVision. So I'm kind of more excited about that show now to see how the powers influencing things is going to play out.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see that as well. One potentially final note, maybe before we wrap it up here, is I mentioned before that maybe Vision is only real in this reality and Wanda's embracing it so that she doesn't lose him. But when Geraldine came out, she came out with those clothes. And now, of course, maybe she entered with some sort of clothing to make herself blend in. But I think she was already there. I think she transitioned just like all the other people did. And she assumed that clothing. That clothing was given to her in the transition. And she came out with that clothing. So I think there's room to believe that even if maybe this is potentially in Wanda's mind and it's being manifested in some kind of realistic way, that maybe a Vision being not real before and only existing in this mind, this dream, this altered reality, were to leave it, then maybe he would come back out.
Maybe, but another thing to note, he has the Mind Stone in his head during this, doesn't he? It looks like the Mind Stone is in his head during this show.
I'm not sure. I'd have to confirm it, but
I think when he's in his Vision form, I think he has it in his head. And if it's not there, then maybe you're right. Maybe he can exist out of there. But if it's there, then maybe that's what's being faked. Maybe that's why this world is bringing him back.
Potentially. I mean, we do know he can exist without the Mind Stone, so even if it's not there, it would be okay. But again, maybe they mean Lynn's credit. Maybe he could come out and the Mind Stone could come back into reality.
Maybe.
Just because the Infinity Stones were destroyed doesn't mean that what they represented, I mean, they were just the compacted identity of those forces that existed in the universe. So it doesn't mean they're ever really gone. I don't know. Something
to think about. All right. But yeah, so we've had the 50s, we've had the 60s, we've had the 70s. Next week we'll be looking at the 80s. Maybe a Cosby Show feel is what we're getting.
Let's get some Reaganomics, man.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other 80s shows. Like, would that be like Growing Pains?
Was Growing Pains an 80s show? I kind of thought it was like wasn't that a 90s show?
I'm not sure. Early Full House, early Roseanne. That show that Michael J. Fox is from.
Which one? I don't know.
He was like a little conservative guy.
I don't know. We'll wait until it gets to the 90s and 2000s. I don't actually know what TV shows are being referenced again.
Punky Brewster. All right. But I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah. I think that was pretty good. We covered a lot of interesting stuff there, and I'm very interested to see where the show goes now. I definitely like this one more, and it gave us a lot more to think on. So
Yes. All right. So I can't remember what our sign off is,
I
but
don't know.
I'm
Until
Ryan.
next time, folks. I'm
Yep.
Robert.
I'm Ryan.
Have a good one.
Yep.